Hello, welcome back to the Resting Stitch Face podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Harding, and we have
Dr. Erin Sheffield.
Erin. You've had a lot on your mind lately, so this is going to be a little bit of a heavier episode, but hopefully not too heavy because I've got a lot of questions too. So, something you may not know about Erin is that she belongs to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints. And that's something that I was 110% shocked about. And we'll go into all of that when I met Erin. But there's been a lot in the news lately, and it's been hitting Erin a little hard, and I can feel it in her heart, and I can feel that it's something that we need to talk about because it's something that we don't talk about, and it really affects me and my faith journey as well. And so I think it's important to talk about. One thing that I would like to say before we get started is one of my biggest things is I think everybody's good at something, right? And that's one of my mantras. And so I always think it's important to listen to somebody's story because that is what humanizes each of us. And it's very easy for us to look at each other from across the screen or through words typed or videos edited and pass judgment and allow that to sit rent free in our brain. But the most important thing to me is having sit down conversations. And so I think that that is the one way we can truly understand one another and see where we're coming from and see um, how we got to where we are and how that shapes us and how that shapes each and every decision that we make in our lives. So, Erin, the stage is yours. I'd like for you to fill us in a little bit on what's been going on and what's on your heart.
Thank you. Well, it's been a weird couple of weeks. I feel like no matter where I turn on the news, they're talking about Mormons. And that's a colloquial term that people are used to calling members of my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints. And it started mostly with the Charlie Kirk shooting. That actually happened in my hometown of Orem, Utah. I grew up right along there. I was in a car accident across the street from that area when I was, like, 4 years old. My twin sister taught at that university for years, and so that hit really close to home, and that conversation about who is the shooter and why is he radicalized and, oh, he was or is a member of that church, and is that part of the reason that he did this? And so that's interesting coming from my hometown and feels very close to home, obviously. And then the leader of our church, Russell M. Nelson, just passed away this last week at 101 years old. And so we're mourning that. He was an amazing man. He was a pioneer in cardiothoracic surgery. He was one of the first people to develop the bypass machine.
Okay, yeah.
Amazing. He saved high profile people from dying from heart disease, etc. And so he was a very impressive man, both spiritually and academically and in medicine. And then the very next morning, after we found out that he passed away, we got the news of the church shooting in Michigan. And I didn't think I was emotional about that, but it's just kind of overwhelming seeing the violence in the world and seeing the narrative around it. And thankfully, there's been love pouring out,
Hmm.
but also a lot of misunderstanding and hate. And when you go on and see comments of people saying things like, well, they're not Christian, so they're all going to hell anyway, and they deserved it type of thing, it's kind of a hard narrative to see. And, we just got done recording a podcast of like people are going to say whatever, no matter what
Yeah.
you talk about. There could be people saying hateful things.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and then you've got The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which is definitely having a moment, and a couple of the stars are on Dancing with the Stars. So it just seems like it's this constant in your face thing that a lot of times we're kind of private about. I'm very vulnerable and open online or on this podcast about most of the parts of my life, but a part that I'm not very open about is my faith. And part of that's just because I hold it sacred and it's something that's really special and important to me. So just throwing it to the masses maybe doesn't feel right. But sometimes it's because I'm a little nervous. Like, are there people that listen to this and just because I'm a member of this church, they're not going to start listening anymore? Sorry, Sarah. But that's like a real
Yeah.
risk.
It is, yeah, and I get that, and I think that's part of my thing. We've talked about this before, like, I have, like, deep-seated faith, but it's, I find it so personal And I am a little skeptical of straight up religion because it's a little businessy and it's a little tax evasiony. And I think that every person has their own connection to their faith and to the universe and to how they fit into the universe and where we came from. And I think that everybody has their own origin story, which is all your own. And so, me talking about it and giving people the opportunity to comment on it, I'm like, that's not your business. That's my business.
Right.
And so I understand 100% like why you keep that because it's a huge part of your life. And so I think that's what is so interesting to me is that you're able to compartmentalize as much as you are. And I think that it's frustrating because the thing that you always say, like, your opinion of me is none of my business, but you also want to be a good steward and a good representative of your faith. And so giving people the opportunity to downgrade you and downgrade your faith, I think it hits different and
Yeah.
it's not okay. And at the end of the day, it's not okay. Nobody deserves to die, right? Like nobody deserves that. When we're born, nobody is like, this person will deserve to die at some point, right? I think that eh, every life is sacred. And I think that that comment is so gross. Regardless of whatever your opinion is, that's just gross. I think that the scary part about social media is that once again, ratings aren't based on boring, happy stories. And I think the way that people get traction and get views and get likes and follows is by being sensational,
Yeah,
inflammatory,
definitely.
reactive, all of those things. And I think that that in and of itself breeds a lot of this feeling that you're getting um of, well, this seems to be the narrative because when you said that sort of narrative isn't at all what I've heard out here. And maybe I'm completely out of touch with reality and I don't pay attention to the news, but really, I haven't seen that. And I'll be totally honest. You can cancel me for this if you want to, but I'd never heard of Charlie Kirk before you texted me and said, hey, there was a shooting in my hometown. And I'm like, oh, I've never heard of that guy. But my social media has been like, the entire thing is filled with stuff about him now. And I'm like, huh, I've never even heard of the guy before. And that's where I'm like, that's where I get so skeptical on all of the opinions because I'm like, where were any of these opinions? They weren't fed to me before. Like, why are they being fed to me now? It's just very
Yeah,
interesting.
definitely.
How you feel?
I think one interesting question that's going along on the social media with the shooting is if Mormons are Christians.
Yeah, that was weird. I've never, okay.
And I think a lot of that dialogue, I hope most people when they say there was a shooting and then they say Mormons aren't Christians, hopefully they're not meaning that in one breath. It comes across a little um insensitive when that's
Hmm.
the first thing you say instead of like, "Oh, how sad or terrible," you know? But there's a lot of questions out there online, a lot of conversation, and so I think maybe it'd be interesting to talk about my perspective. I think if you tell a Mormon, or we prefer to be called members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but that's a mouthful. Like, if you tell us that we're not Christian, that's pretty affronting to a lot of us, and that's
Do you
because
think it's weird that the name Jesus Christ is in part of your name?
but we're
And
not Christian.
yes, sorry,
I
just
mean,
had to, sorry, I'd actually
that's
never
the
heard that.
question.
Like,
That's what we're all thinking too,
making
and
sure.
it's a little offensive to us to tell us that we're not because we overwhelmingly as members of the church are trying to center our life around Christ. We believe that he's our savior. We believe that he's the son of God, all these things. And so I used to get really offended when people would argue that we aren't. And then I kind of realized I think we're having two
Hmm.
different conversations here or two different
Wavelengths of the same conversation.
definitions,
Yeah.
yeah, and so to me, it's kind of like if we're talking about pizza and one person's talking about Chicago deep dish pizza and one
Hmm.
person's talking about New York pizza, and we're all talking about pizza, but our idea of what pizza is and is supposed to be
Hmm.
the right kind of pizza and the pizza we grew up with and what we understand pizza to be, even though they have some of the same ingredients, it seems very different,
It's a
and
different
so
experience. Yeah.
it's a different experience, it's a different
Yeah.
recipe, and so I
Yeah.
think that's
And your
really
GI
kind of where
issues may be different also.
we're coming from. So, yes. So, I think when traditional Christians are saying we're not Christian, I think what they're saying, things like, "You guys don't believe in the same Jesus," and we're like, "What do you mean? That doesn't make any sense." And I think
Uh-huh.
they're basically saying, "You guys just don't fit into, like, the traditional sects of Christianity." And we're saying, "But we follow Jesus." So we can
Yeah.
argue till we're blue in the face, but since we're talking about 2 different things, I don't think unless you can just be open to like, "Well, I can see why you say that," and, "Oh, I can see why you say that," then we're
Right.
not really going anywhere, we're not really convincing either. Because in my heart, I'm a follower of Jesus, and in your heart, there's no way I can be because I don't believe the Nicene Creed, you know? So I think that that's, an interesting conversation that I think both members of my church and members not of my church can learn, you know, I think it's just a different
Can you tell me more about this
conversation.
creed?
Yeah, so my understanding of the Nicene Creed is that, like, oh, how long ago was it? I don't remember what century it was. A long time
That's
ago,
okay. Mhm.
1400s or something. They came together as a committee to decide what they believe Christianity means. And
Mhm.
my understanding is that there were some people that didn't see the Trinitarian view of God and some people who did. And so that's when they decided people who are Christians believe in the Trinity and anything that's outside of that is heresy.
Oh. Oh.
So that's like traditional Christian evangelical, etcetera. If
Theology.
I'm
Yeah.
wrong, someone please educate me because
Oh god.
I hate when people
I
who
wish that
don't
I
really
could be
know
the
what
one
they're
to educate
talking
you on
about.
this.
I don't like when people who don't really understand our faith try to explain it as if they're an authority or an expert, so I'm certainly not trying to
Sorry.
do that, but in my research or understanding, that's I hope that's correct, so
Yes. I should have researched more before we started talking about this because I feel like a really bad Christian there. Cool. So, one thing that I think is a life experience that was very impactful for me was when I was on deployment and we went to Dubai and I had a friend that lived in Dubai and the MWR, the Morale, Welfare, and Recreation team, they set up all of these little excursions that you can partake in, if you want to. Like, they could plan little trips, kinda like if you go on a cruise, but it is a cruise, but not a really fun cruise.
not a luxury
And
cruise.
there's no balconies. There are, but they have big guns on them. I got in trouble for sitting on one time. Oops.
Oh, no.
And in a lawn chair. Anyway, my friend that lived there was like, "You need to go to I wanna say it was called the Sheikh Mohammed Center for Cultural Awareness." That's what I'm gonna say, and that may be a little bit off. But it was this, traditional home in the middle of Dubai, that they had preserved and restored, and it was sort of like a museum at that point, but they hosted, like a breakfast or a lunch or whatever, and he said, "You should sign up for a breakfast, and go." And so a couple of us went, signed up for this breakfast, and they invited us in. There's a traditional breakfast, a traditional fare laid out on the ground with the cushions all around, beautiful, right? And it was in a center sort of courtyard because these are multifamily homes. That was the traditional home, right? And when I say multi-generational home is what I meant to say. And the food was so good. But the women hosting it were a mix of Emirati women and expats. So expats who were from England, wherever else, and had married Emirati men, and they had acclimated into this culture and into the society, and so they were part of this too. And one of the things that they said was, "Welcome. We're really happy to have you here. Our whole mission of this center is to open the doors for conversation, understanding, so that our culture here doesn't get whitewashed, doesn't get muted because it's very important. Because when you go to Dubai, it's like Vegas, right? A
Yeah,
lot of it, but the
yeah.
the culture is so beautiful, and so they're like, you can ask any questions that you want. Don't hold back, and we will answer them to the best of our abilities. Like if you have questions about how we live our lives, how we think about these things, why this and that and the other, you can ask all of the questions. Like this is a group of friends, okay? And so that was really cool because it gave you the opportunity to ask the questions that you really wanted to know, but didn't really want to ask or didn't know who to ask. And you start to develop your own biases because you don't know who to ask and can't get the answers. And so this is kind of how I'm seeing this conversation, if that's okay with you. Okay.
Oh, of
Because I
course.
think it's cool to have colleague, friend, fellow female oral surgeon, that is LDS, right? Because growing up, I only met one Mormon gal when I was in high school, right? Because I grew up in Virginia and I just didn't know anybody. And then went to dental school in South Carolina, and I think there was a couple of Mormon guys. There was one like 2 classes down, I think, and that was kinda it. And then I went to residency and met a few more, and then here in California, know a few more. And then in dentistry, obviously, it's a very like, there's lots of them.
Saturated, yes.
Yes, which I didn't know because in South Carolina, it wasn't that way.
Oh,
Um,
that's interesting.
yeah, and so,
In dental school interviews, they'd always be like, "And just so you know, there's a lot of people of your faith here," as if that was a draw, and I'm like, "That's every dental school." But
except South
thanks,
Carol
yeah.
well, maybe now, who
Yep,
knows?
Virginia.
Why is that? We'll start with that question.
Yes, interesting question. I think a lot of it has to do with just, people really want a job that is going to have a lot of security, but also some flexibility and more family time, and so dentistry is presented as that. There's a lot of
Yeah,
LDS physicians as well. I remember in dental school at BYU, like over 200 people would go to dental school every year just from BYU. So just a lot of people choosing those healthcare
yeah,
fields, and dentistry is very popular just because it's marketed as a little more family friendly.
yeah. I'll tell you my bias, my thought on it before we had this
Yeah.
conversation, or and I don't know if it's still, but was that, I had heard something that within the church, like, part of it is going into a profession that is helpful for people. So it's
Mhm.
not just like, I'm a businessman, I'm a this, I'm a that. It's like a profession that is helping people and can be a lucrative job.
Yeah.
And so, like, those 2 things together, that was my biased understanding of why there were so many in healthcare, and especially in dentistry. Anyway,
That's
that was my thought.
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think yeah, I've never heard anyone, like, say that, like, I don't they're I've not heard, like, over the pulpit, like, "Go to a job that helps people." I've never heard that before, but I think there is definitely a service mindset in our church, and
Yeah.
a lot of reason that people are probably personally choosing that, so maybe it's not preached that way, but definitely would make sense. I would also say there are a ton of very fabulously wealthy, successful business people in our church, like, you'd probably
Yeah.
be surprised. Like the
Yeah.
Mitt Romneys of the world,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Yeah.
circles that they run in, so there's definitely lots of
Yeah.
people in business, and the BYU Business School is very competitive, etcetera, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it, even if it's not explicitly preached or like rule or something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Alright, my next one, you ready?
Yeah.
You're the only LDS female I've ever met that is a dentist, and especially an oral surgeon, and, like, actively practicing in your faith. I guess that's the way I say that. And so when I found out that you were Mormon, I'm like, "I don't understand. I thought you weren't allowed to work. Like, I understand that you're all, like, really smart, and that there's so many of these women that are married to these guys that I work with, and they all have professional degrees, but they don't work and they don't use it, and it's, like, shocking to me." And so when I met you, I was like, "What? How? Is your husband Mormon?" Like, is it because
No,
you're the
that's
only
my
Mormon
style,
in the
my living
family,
style.
and so, like, it's okay? Anyway,
Yeah, no, I am definitely a unicorn, and it is unusual. I'll say less unusual than it used to be. I know that there's at least one other LDS female oral surgeon. Little shout out to my friend Marianne Udy in St. Louis, so she's not even that far from me. But yes, we are unusual, and that was a big part of my origin story, kind of at undergrad, and how I ended up where I am is that I was the Women in Dentistry Club president at BYU, which was all of like 3 or 4 of us
I was like,
out of
"So you started a club for yourself?"
well, I didn't start it, so there was at least someone before me. The funny thing too, my husband's cousin, Ashley Sheffield, before I knew Abraham Sheffield, was another woman that wanted to be a dentist, and so she's like one of the few people I know, so and it kind of funny little small world thing, but yes, I was the president of that very prestigious club, and meanwhile, there's like 200 men per year going to dental school
Yeah.
from BYU. So, It was very unusual to be choosing that career path, and it's because there's a really big emphasis on marriage and family. So they have really pushed for women to be in the home and be in the family because we think that's the most important work is raising your family. And I believe that too.
Same.
That
Yeah.
should be my most important priority, right? But they also said get all the education you can, and so that was kind of a interesting
Right.
dichotomy. And I think a lot of times they framed it as like in
Mhm.
case you have to provide for your family if your husband dies or something. So it was always kind of this asterisk the way people understood it. And so when I was at BYU, um, there were so few women going into dentistry or even in dentistry. I'd never met a woman dentist before that I had a woman named Laura Fauchier who contacted me, and she was at University of Iowa, and she's also a member of our church looking for other women like her. It's just this
Yeah.
desire to connect and not feel so weird. And because of her, I ended up applying at Iowa, ended up at Iowa, did my
Wow.
training in my dental school there, and so that part alone is a big part of how I met
And
my
that's where you met
husband.
Abe, right?
Yeah, so
Oh, that's crazy. Okay.
so that was definitely part of it, but being at BYU, was interesting. I mean, some people were supportive, but I had a lot of people who were not. Like, I would date people, and they would be like, "How are you possibly going to do that as a woman if you're gonna
Yeah.
have kids?" And I had a pretty serious boyfriend at the time, and his uncle was an orthodontist, and he was excited to introduce him to me, like, "Erin wants to be a dentist too." And his son was going into orthodontics too, or in dentistry and hoping to be an orthodontist, and so you thought he'd be like, "Oh, good for you," but instead of being excited, he was like, "Are you just applying to see if you can get in?" And I was like, "What?" Like, I moved home.
I'm
I
like,
did
well,
not
of
wanna
course
live at
I'm
home,
hoping to get in.
but I
Duh.
moved home and lived with my parents my last, like, year of
Oh my
college,
gosh.
which wasn't very fun,
No.
because I was saving money to go on all of these interview trips
Yeah.
and applying, and I was like, yeah, I just applied for my pride so that I could be like, "Well, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I turned down dental school." Things like that. The
Yeah.
most egregious thing is that I had a religion teacher who told me that God wouldn't tell a 21-year-old, 20-year-old woman to go to dental school. And that's, like, goes against our whole faith. We believe that Joseph Smith, the starter of our church, we believe he saw God when he was 14 and God told him to start this church, the church that Jesus had on the earth when he was alive. So whether you believe that or not, I'm not asking you to believe that story, but that's our church
Yeah.
origin story that he talks to young people and gives
Yeah.
them personal revelation. But I was not
Yeah.
entitled to receive that revelation. And he essentially went on to say, like, if I continue on the path, which I should, to pursuing dental school when I was old enough, which my understanding I felt like was like when you're unmarriageable, like 24, 25, then maybe you can go ahead. He doesn't know I was like graduated from dental school by then. Or you shouldn't make a decision that big about your family without your husband and blah, 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 which, again, go back to my origin story. Like when I went to Iowa, to dental school, I found my husband. So,
Yeah.
there definitely was, kind of a pushback. I remember being in the chemistry lab, going to
Mhm.
chemistry lab hours and hours a week because I was not very good at chemistry, and one of the gentlemen there who wanted to go to dental school was like, "I don't even know why you study because since you're a woman, you're just gonna get in and take a guy's spot." So,
I
wasn't an
mean, I
easy
got
place
that
for
too, so
me.
it's fine.
Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't an easy place,
Yeah.
to be sometimes in that regard, and so definitely was pushing back, but I felt very confidently that that was the path that God had chosen for me, and I continued to feel that, and I felt like, again, when it was like, I think I should go to residency, but again, that's putting off my family a little bit longer. That was the
Mhm.
harder thing. I was told I didn't get into my residency the first time because I was a member of our church and I was going against the grain so much that they weren't sure I was committed. So it's definitely been a challenge at points, but I really believe in personal revelation. I believe that God can talk to me and tell me the information I need for my life, and so
Mhm, and direction,
that's
yeah.
a really strong tenet of our church, so I think it's tricky when, you're getting messages that you should be home and be with the family. I honestly thought that was the path I would choose. That's not the path that God put me on, but I had the confidence to listen to what God was telling me, and sometimes it's just a little different than the general consensus or whatever,
Yeah.
if that makes
Do you
sense.
think that part of your tendency to not really talk about your faith is because you know that, like, people are like, "Oh, but aren't you supposed to be a stay-at-home mom?" Or like, "Oh, well, you can't come into residency because we don't know that your commitment is to this profession." Do you think maybe that's part of it?
Yeah, no, that probably is. I remember one of the dental students, and by this time I was married and I was in this congregation with them, and she said, "So are you gonna quit being a dentist once you're done to have babies?" And I was like, "No." But yeah, I used to get a lot of comments like that, or just like you're
Yeah,
going to church and everyone's like, "Why did you move to Iowa City? What does your husband do?" And so I just like, "Oh, he's a medical student." I just leave it at that.
yeah,
If they're not gonna ask me, then they can feel dumb later when they find out, "Oh, you're a doctor too."
yeah. Do you feel like you get snubbed by other women in the church?
I don't think so. I think earlier on it was more of a pain point. Now that people see the life that I'm living, I feel like there's a lot less judgment now
Okay.
because they're like, "Oh, well, look how she's, like, making it work, and she still goes to church, and she's still a good mom." I think
Yeah, it's
there's
enlightening.
not much to question anymore, or back then
Okay.
everyone insecure and, "Why is she doing that, and should I be doing that, and I chose not to do that," or there was a social media post within the last 6 months or so, and one of the female leadership of our church was talking about how she was a lawyer her whole, adult life, and she
Yeah,
had kids, and so she was talking about how grateful she was able to prioritize her family, but also have a career, and that was very shocking to me to see the church putting that narrative
yeah,
so forward,
right.
because I never felt like the church was overtly like, "You can't," but I'm just going against the
Yeah, but
norm.
all of the messaging
Yeah,
out
but the
there is like, "Stay
subliminal
home, stay home,
messaging
stay home." Yes.
or I think a lot of
Yeah.
times the way that when we hear doctrine or things preached over the pulpit, the way we interpret it may not be like God's law or his, his way that he
Mhm.
wants us to interpret it. But when they did that, that got such a huge uproar, and all of these people were angry because they
Oh.
chose to stay home, and now you're telling me it's okay that people didn't? And I was
Oh.
so shocked. I'd never considered that viewpoint because for me, I felt like I was facing this uphill battle, and I got the comments and I got the judgment, and they're like, all these people that did that, and now they're just these amazing, wonderful people that are getting applause, and I'm like, "But you don't know the other side." But I
Yeah,
also didn't
but I
think of the
see
people
their
that
yeah, I see
chose
their
to
point
stay
too.
home and feel
Mhm.
maybe it's like, "I wanted to do that, but I didn't think I should, or I didn't think that was okay." And I
Yeah.
was just
Yeah,
talking
'cause
to a friend about that herself, like, "I would have
I
maybe
feel
gone
that
to
so
med
deeply.
school, and now I could, but I don't think now I want to. I've got kids, and I don't know that I wanna go through that."
Right.
And so I think there's kinda hurt on both sides,
Yeah.
and I think that's just one of those tricky things where I think one of the biggest criticisms I hear of our church and maybe other churches too is, like, this idea of blindly following. And in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm a skeptic. I am a total skeptic, and so we believe when the prophet speaks, we should listen to him. When we read the scriptures, we should follow the scriptures, all of that. I take everything with a grain of salt, and I'm like, "Are you sure? Is this
Yeah.
me, God?" And so when I hear a message, I never take it at face value, and I go and I, like, ask God myself, like, "God, is this really the path you have for me? Is
Mhm.
this okay?" And so every decision I've made, even if it's been
Okay.
a little bit opposite or backwards from what, like, the normal group of people are doing or maybe even believing,
Mhm.
I feel like I've been able to make decisions that are not only true to my faith, but true to me. So, I've never had to, like, look back with regret, but I think a lot of people are just trying really hard to, like, "Well, they said, and I guess I'm just gonna do it," and I feel bad for people who have those regrets or whatever for
I do
those bad
too,
decisions.
and I think it's interesting because I've had this question and I've asked, like, some of my colleagues around here a couple times because 'cause I'm like, "It's really expensive to live here." and it's getting expensive to live everywhere. And so if you're asking one person to be the primary breadwinner, and the other person who is very capable, educated, and their kids are in school now full time, like, they're not supposed to go to work. That seems to be silly because it's really expensive to live here. So you're asking
Mhm.
somebody to not be able to utilize all of
Yeah,
their gifts that they've been given, I guess,
yeah.
or their desires to work or whatever it is. I don't understand. And so they were saying that more and more the women are starting to work more. A lot of them are finding ways to work from home or which is big in California anyway, finding ways to supplement the income so that you can live here because I mean, I was working with a guy in the Navy and we make okay money, but
Yeah.
for a family when I think he had 3 or 4 kids, and he was supporting the whole family with his like, lieutenant income,
Yeah.
that's just it's too much to ask. It
Well, I
is
think
here,
where
it's
you
just crazy.
see there is this really entrepreneurial spirit, Utahns and LDS people, and I think that's part of that is them
Yeah.
trying to find ways that they can make income from home, and that's why I think you get the Mormon mommy bloggers or even the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, mom talk people. They're trying to
Mhm.
find other ways to monetize because many of them are very talented, very smart
Yeah,
people that are trying to find ways to be home and accessible more.
and also contribute financially too.
Yeah. I think on the flip side that there is a lot of judgment towards the stay-at-home moms, and so I always try to let them know on my side, I admire what you're doing, and it's a
Mhm.
very hard job, and hopefully we're not snubbing our nose for them making maybe a sacrifice instead of choosing the worldly thing. They're trying to choose the more godly thing or whatever, and that's something to be admired even if you don't agree with it.
Yeah, and it's just interesting kind of from my standpoint because I'm not LDS, right? And so it's my
Right.
choice. I'm choosing
Right.
whether to do this or not. And it doesn't have anything to do with my church saying one thing or another, subliminally or not. It's just my own
Right.
choice. But then when it's like, oh, wait, I'm being told that I can't do that, I feel the stirring to do something. Like, I think that's where that kind of
Mhm. Yeah, for
feeling
sure.
comes from. I get that.
I think a lot of people think there's a lot more control, like, overtly coming from the church, like, we're being forced to do things, and some of that might just be, I think, as, like, a block as far as, like, other churches go. People in our church are probably the most devout, like, they've done studies on that, like
Yeah. Well, and it's the like, you can't have coffee, you can't drink, you
there are a
can't
lot of
do all
strict
these
things that
things.
we choose to do, and so it feels like
Yeah.
coercive control, but, like, you were asking about tithing. Are we forced to pay tithing? Is there some kind of account and keeping track of that to make sure and we are asked to pay 10% of our money to tithing, and that's similar to
Every church.
many churches,
Yeah.
but is it like being forced? No. Every year at the end of the year, we call it tithing settlement, and we go to our bishop, and he says, "Have you paid your tithing?" And we say, "Yes" or "No," and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, we don't have to. We don't have to pay the
Oh, okay. Because I
tithing.
thought that you got in trouble if it was found out that you weren't doing that.
No, no one's mad at
Oh.
you or you're not in trouble. No,
But you do feel a little guilty when you say no, right? Because 'Cause you're
no,
like, "No,
right.
no." And
That
he's like,
that's
"Didn't you go
between
to that wonderful trip to Japan?" And you're like,
That's between you
"Yes."
and God. Yeah, exactly. Now, to go to our temple, which is different than our church, every week we go to church. That's where the people were when the shooting that wasn't at a temple, that was just at a church where we have our normal
Oh.
our temple's a different one. You might see them. They're usually like really big white
Oh, yeah, we have one in
spired
San Diego.
buildings. Yes, San
That thing is
Diego has one.
incredible.
They're always very beautiful. That's a different thing. That's something that we go to. They aren't even open on Sundays. You have to meet certain criteria to go. You basically have to be a card carrying member. We literally have a little card recommend, and that if I want to go there, I have to be a full tithing payer. So, am I
It's like
punished
a
for
like a
not paying
membership.
my It's like a Costco membership for
Yeah.
the temple. Yeah. You get a discount on heaven if you use it. So, if you're not following, some of those things, then you don't have access to that, but is that
So I
punishment?
can't go to the temple is what you're
Maybe.
trying to
So
tell me.
you could not without being
Well,
baptized and meeting some criteria,
see that
but you can come to church anytime you want.
that means I can't drink wine anymore either, so that's really hard. Or
Right, you
coffee.
wouldn't be able to go
I
to the
live on a
temple.
coffee farm. What am I gonna
Um
do? But yeah, so then you don't often go to the temple then. Do you have to get married in the temple? Do you get married in the temple or do you get married in the church? That's very confusing.
it could be
Or outside?
either.
or somewhere?
So, what we believe the temple is that you get married for, we say, time and all eternity. In the church, you get married till death do you part, just like,
Oh,
most people say. So,
whoa.
that's a big part of our doctrine is that we believe
Yeah.
families are together forever, that if you get married in the temple, you'll be married when you die, where my understanding, like traditional evangelical, like no one's married, you're not given or taken in marriage is kind of the scripture I hear to support
Huh.
that. So, you're all just kind of like together as angels or something, not as families.
Interesting. What else? What other questions did I have? Why is it that Mormons get married so young for the most part?
Do you want the real answer or the
Well,
spiritual
of course I
answer?
want the real answer. I'm not gonna ask the
Well,
that's why we're talking.
ultimately, I know, right? Ultimately, it comes down to, again, that real emphasis on families and that being first. And so not putting that off just to like make enough money before you can get married or whatever. A big part of it is sex.
Okay,
So
that's what I was wondering.
when
Because, like, you
we're
can't, like, no
like a
sex until
chaste
marriage, and
life is
so
very important.
yeah.
I would say the majority of LDS people probably are virgins when they get married, and so it's hard to live that lifestyle if you're like 35 before you get married. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's been historically the same thing in the Christian
Right.
realm as well, like the
Yeah.
traditional Christian realm as well. So,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
then if you're gonna have, a large family, then getting started earlier than later,
It's
obviously,
fair.
if
Yeah.
you're having 6 to 9 kids or something, you gotta get going.
That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of kids.
After Rivers, that's a lot of kids. Okay. So Erin, last weekend I went to my niece's wedding and they had at the rehearsal dinner a soda pop bar and my other niece was like, "Do you want me to make you one?" And I'm like, "I don't really drink soda." And she's like, "Oh, but it's so good." And I'm like, "Well, what is it?" She's like, "Well, it's this and this and this and this and this." And she's like, "Here, why don't you taste mine?" And I was like, "Oh, this is disgusting." It's so, like there's so much happening and that I don't know. I don't even like soda, so, like, I don't know. And I'm like, "Where in the world did you come up with this?" She's like, "Oh, I didn't. It's from this Secret Lives of Mormon Wives show. Have you seen it?" And I'm like, "No, I don't really watch TV." And so I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it. But is this she's like, "Yeah, they have these drive up
Oh.
places where you go and instead of getting coffee, they go and they do this." And I was like, "I thought they weren't even allowed to have soda." And I was like, "But wait, they do drink Mountain Dew." And so then I'm like and so then I'm like totally confused. And yeah. So tell me more about the Secret Life of Mormon Wives because I haven't watched it at all. I've heard musings of it, and I don't really know about it. But what do you think about it?
Oh, yeah, I think we should do, like, a whole episode on this because there's so much interesting stuff we could talk about. But, yeah, the soda thing is funny to me. That's a huge thing. It's like a billion-dollar industry, I think,
Yeah,
in
that's what she was
Utah.
saying. It's crazy.
And Abe and I have talked about, like, we should bring a soda place to Quincy, but we're both kind of, like, morally opposed because 'cause I'm like, "I'm a dentist and you're a physician, and I would feel bad, you know, doing that to people's health," but also it seems like
Yeah, you're
he's
like,
making a lot of money and would be a good business deal.
is it like a? Can we start calling
But
it like a diabetes dispensary?
yes, they're, like, essentially drive-throughs. They're drive-throughs where they have coffee or not coffee, that's the whole point. They have soda they're soda shops, drive-through soda shops, fountain soda shops that they call, like, dirty Dr. Pepper and stuff, so they have, like, different like, coconut serum or lime, and there's all these different mixes, and then they tend to sell, like, cookies and stuff as well, so it's
Yeah,
kinda
diabetes
funny,
dispensary.
a big part of, I think, why they're taking off is because we have a health code that we live by called the Word of Wisdom, and part of that's no coffee, tea, or alcohol. And so we have to find some kind of vice, and it tends to be sugar, or in this case, pretend sugar a lot of the times, like Diet Coke. Um,
Oh
I think it's
god.
kind of like this badge of courage to be a Diet Coke drinking Mormon because some people do, some people don't. So it feels kind of like you're like, I do what I want. I'm
It's
not
so hard
moving
for me because 'cause I'm like, "But
nowhere.
coffee
I
and
can
tea
do
are
what
from
I
the
want."
earth." Like,
I know. Well, and that's where again,
what about green tea?
if you're
Green
replacing
tea.
coffee with something that's probably worse and maybe you've got other
Like,
problems,
ugh.
then, the fact that you're following this code, letter of the
Yeah.
law versus spirit of the law. So that's
Yeah,
like a
I
whole
get it.
interesting thing.
I get it.
But the show itself is very interesting. It's basically this group of women who started on TikTok with like dances, and then it became very big and controversial because there was a swinging scandal. So, of course, when you've got a group of churchy women being associated
Mhm.
with that, it's very, ooh, interesting and
Inflammatory.
scandalous and
Yes.
inflammatory. So they made a show that's on Hulu. I will say I watched the show. I very much enjoy the show. I think it's very interesting and entertaining to watch. It's also terrible. It's like trashy, the ultimate trashy reality TV.
Did they do the
Like
potlucks with the Jello salad? Please say
I
yes, please
haven't
say
seen any
yes.
potlucks, they need
Ah!
to, but that's definitely a thing, with the lime
Yes.
jello with the carrots in it, maybe raisins. I haven't seen the raisins for decades, luckily. But that's very interesting, because it's bringing up a lot of conversations and
Mhm.
confusion because, a lot of members are offended, or I have friends that, "Won't I won't watch that show," and I'm like, "No, I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch it for sure, I need to know
Yeah.
what they're saying."
Yeah.
But I think part of it, members are sometimes offended because they are using this platform and making a lot of money off of the word Mormon, but they're not most of them are not really living the lifestyle you associate with our
Oh,
church
okay, yeah.
much. It's kinda hard for us to look at that and be like, "What do you mean
Yeah.
Secret Lives of Mormon Wives? You guys are drinking coffee every day on the show. They're
Yeah.
drinking alcohol on the show. They're wearing clothes like most of us don't wear on the show. They're
Yeah.
cussing all the time on the show. They're talking
Yeah.
about swinging. They're getting pregnant with their boyfriend."
Yeah.
The only thing Mormon about this show is that they
This is not
like
what I
to
was expecting.
show it's Utah, so there are lots of Mormons there, and they used to be Mormon. So they're like
Yeah.
definitely more culturally Mormon than like religiously so, and so sometimes that makes
I see.
people a little up in arms that like
Yeah.
they don't represent us, and that's not who we are.
Yeah.
I think it's
Is
interesting.
that kinda
Anything that
like
gets
that wasn't
people
there a Broadway
talking.
play like The Book of Mormon? Is
Mhm.
that kind of a similar sentiment from like, LDS
From the
community?
members.
'Cause I don't actually know
Um
what it was about, sorry. Totally out of pop culture
Yeah,
here.
my issue with the Book of Mormon play, I haven't seen it. I don't plan to see it. I actually tried listening to the soundtrack, and one, there's a lot of swearing and
Yeah.
stuff in it that I don't always like listening to.
Yeah.
But two, I thought it was offensive because they say things that we believe that are real things that we believe, but they say it in a way that it's a joke. And
Yeah.
hearing the raucous laughter behind it, when you take something out of context or you don't explain it well or you
Mhm.
don't look at it with a view of faith, then maybe it seems really bizarre and weird. But just because you believe something that I don't believe, I'm not gonna be like, "Ah, oh my gosh, ah!" And that's like it's a comedy, and that's like the
Sorry.
level of laughter that I'm hearing on the
Okay.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
And so to
I get
me,
that.
it's hard when people are just acting like you're complete idiots, and
Yeah.
that's what faith is. Faith is taking things that maybe aren't sensical and opening your eyes to the spiritual and facing it with the eye of faith. If you're
Mhm.
a biblical Christian, so much of the Bible, we could laugh at that. Like the
Yes.
Old Testament, man, like what is going on in there? Like
Yes. There's
there's
so
a
much.
talking donkey?
Yeah.
Like, come on. That
Yeah.
is bizarre.
Right.
Or like Jesus raised some guy from the dead? Yeah, right. Like
Yeah.
all of Christianity, you have to look at it with the eye of faith or
Yeah.
there's
It doesn't
so
make
many
sense. Yeah.
things, and so I can understand that some of the
Yeah.
things we believe seems bizarre, but if you're not truth seeking and willing to like consider it and maybe ask God,
Yeah.
then of course it's going to seem weird and dumb. And I think any religion we could probably find things like that. So that's
Yeah.
what's hard, I think, is just when
Okay. When
people
it's
act
taken out of
like you're
context.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, yeah.
I think overall, they say, no PR is bad PR or whatever. Like there's just a lot of people looking us up and learning about us
Yeah.
from that content. So I try not to get too offended or upset about any of that. And there
Yeah.
are things to criticize in any church, and not everything we get right, but you try to take the good and and do as best you can.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because it's this sort of snowball, right? They started to get probably a lot of attention from the dance thing, and then it was like, "Oh, well, if we create this content, that gets more attention," and so then it just
Mhm.
kind of snowballs and down the wrong side of the hill.
Right.
And then the train's going, and then you get TV producers or whatever involved in reality TV, and then it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
it's over
Oh,
then,
yeah.
like, I mean, none of it's real, so I don't know, not my jam. Not my jam,
It
but
it's I think it's hilarious. My husband and I will watch it, like, binge watch
yeah,
the episodes when they come out, but, I mean, it's kinda terrible, and, like, can I watch it when my kids are in the background? No, because there's a lot of F words.
yeah,
But, the Mormon wives are living their lives.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
funny.
don't let Rivers watch that, he'll repeat it. It's good.
Yeah.
All the time, like, "You don't say that, it's not good to say that."
Right.
Yeah, so I think back to what we were talking about originally, I think I like I like that we're talking about this because I think it's important to be authentically you, right? Um, and being authentically you is this is part of it, right?
Mhm.
And I am a little sad that I am not more like well versed in religion in general. I think that I love like learning about all of them because I think it's important to understand where you're coming from, right? And at the end of the day, we all just want to be good people and live good lives and have happy, healthy families and do what's best for them and for communities. And so I like that we're talking about this. I hope it doesn't cancel us because we're talking about religion. Whatever, I don't care
Right.
actually. Apparently, there's a new Taylor Swift song about being canceled and how all my friends are canceled or something. So I'm in that group totally. So that's cool. Um, I don't know. How do you
Well,
feel
I
about it?
think I think we can switch out probably any church interchangeably. I think it
Absolutely.
really is about love and acceptance, and we're not all gonna agree on anything. And it's interesting to me how much hate there is, and maybe we swap out religion for politics or whatever. We're so
Hmm.
polarized right now, it feels like in this country. And anyone who doesn't agree like us, we demonize them and we try to find all the ways that they're different instead of finding the ways that we're the same. And I remember when the church shooting happened, I messaged one of my Jewish friends and I was like, "Is this what it feels like? Like, I've
That's what I was
never
gonna say because
felt
it's
worried to go to
so
church and to be targeted in that
right.
way." And she's like, "Yeah, it's terrible." And
Yeah, it
we have
makes no
so much in
sense.
common with our Jewish friends, and we have so much in common with our Christian friends, and we have so much in common with our Muslim friends and our Sikh
Right.
friends or our Buddhist friends or our atheist friends. Like, really, I think God loves all of his children, and whether you call him Allah or Jesus, or I think it
Yeah.
comes down to that shared humanity. And
Hmm.
just because I believe something that sounds totally wacky, does that mean that you have to tell me all the time I'm going to hell?
Right.
Maybe once was enough. I figured it out.
Yeah.
Can we find common ground and be kind? I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. I agree. The
Well, I
shared
appreciate
humanity.
you bringing your questions to me. I think
Thank you
most of
for
us
answering all of my questions. There's
most of
so many
us
more
are
probably that I'll come up with.
happy to answer questions. I'd much rather have people ask me directly than go dig up weird stuff on the internet. There's a lot of
Sure.
really weird stuff that people say we believe that we don't, or
Mhm.
just like any church, there are different interpretations of things. You could ask probably 5 Catholics
Yeah.
this or that, and they're all gonna believe differently, and that's the same with our
Yeah.
church too. We're all different people living the life as best we know how. So, thanks for listening.
Thank you for chatting. I learned a lot. We'll talk soon.
Bye. Love this conversation? Don't keep it to yourself. Hit follow, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you on the next episode of The Resting Stitch Face.